It's Dr. Lori. I'm at Urban Renewal Consignment in Marietta, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. I'm talking about designer handbags. Okay, well, I saw Louis Vuitton, and I'm going to Louis Vuitton, and you probably are not surprised by that. Probably because I'm LV, and so is Louis Vuitton. But right here, beautiful. What do you look at first? I don't even have to move it. Stitching. Okay, so you want to know about whether or not you have one of the many knockoffs of Louis Vuitton, or you want to know if you have the real thing. So here's the real thing. First of all, Louis Vuitton will have, of course, its logo, which typically will not be cut off by any of the leather accents. Okay, they try very hard to make sure that the Louis Vuitton LV logo is prominent throughout. The other thing that you're going to see is in fact, the way in which the pieces here, even on the sides, try not to cut off the Louis Vuitton logo if they can help it. Piping has to be consistent all the way around, and also the stitching is going to be consistent in a particular way. So I want to show you that, and then I'm going to show you some of the other telltale signs once we get into the bag. But first of all, you're going to have a consistent, it kind of reminds me when I talk about quilts and the quilting videos, a stitch in time saves 9. These are all hand stitched. So basically what you have is you have a consistent taunt stitch, the same size stitch, right? And the color of the stitch is a complement to the lighter color of the leather, which is always selected on Louis Vuitton pieces like this. I want to show you a couple of things that you would look for. First of all, the strength in the hardware. The hardware is going to be a relatively shiny gold on Louis Vuitton. That's not true on others. That's not true on Chanel and some of the other big names. Now, with a lot of these pieces, you're going to see some of this staining. You're going to see where, it probably sat in a closet, for example, or maybe it was out of its bag, its protective dust bag. Look right here, right in the hardware, you're going to also see the Louis Vuitton. That's very common, and you have to look for it, because if it's not there, then you probably have a fake. But the stitching is really almost always the telltale sign, and it's the easiest thing to find. It's like the easiest identifier. If this stitching looks off, if the stitching seems like it's coming apart, that's probably a good sign that you don't have the real thing. Another point on this that you want to see is you want to see the LV logo on the zipper. Now, it's a little shinier. It's a little shiny of a gold coating that you see on the zippers for the most part. Another thing that you're going to see, if you were to take this and start to open this zipper, most of the time with the pieces that haven't been used very hard, the zipper really, it takes a little bit of movement, it takes a little bit of strength to open these zippers. So you hold on to this portion and you move the zipper. So if it moves really smoothly, I would go, someone used it kind of a lot. Most of these duffel bags aren't used all that much. Also notice here, little details like this is what the big designers do. So they make sure that they have the Louis Vuitton, where it's made element. Inside the bag is going to tell you a lot. Most places, first of all, will have it packed to keep the shape of the bag, and that's always a good sign that they care enough to keep the shape of the bag. The other thing is, if there is a dust bag that goes with it that you would store it in, usually that's within the bag. But what I want you to see is I want you to see this. So here's a little key ring, right? So there's your little clasp here. Here's another Louis Vuitton logo on the interior. The logos have to be on the interior and the exterior. So you want to look for that. And then look here at these numbers. These numbers and letters indicate the first 2 letters in a Louis Vuitton bag of this time period. These 2 letters would actually indicate where it was made. Okay? So people will say, oh, well, I know that the Louis Vuitton pieces are made in they come from Paris, for example, that it's made in France. Well, it's made in different parts. So it gives you an actual 2-letter notation of what portion of France it actually was made in. It also shows you, too, the serial numbers that correspond with the actual bag. Another thing is you'll notice, now, the Louis Vuitton logo up right here, as the bag turns, it's going to continue. Right? So it continues and continues. So on this side, it looks like the Louis Vuitton logo is upside down. That's actually correct for this particular bag. Okay? Okay, now you've got all of that information, and now you are armed to know and recognize the Louis Vuitton bag. Let's see how much it is. That's really where we're going with this. So here's our tag. $839.99. Now, a lot of you are seeing pieces like this. It has a couple of problems. So if this were me, being the picayune appraiser that I am, my problems would be, okay, my first problem would be right here. I'd say, oh, that's kind of visible. I kind of can see that. That could be, of course, addressed, right? So you could have a professional address this. But that looks like the worst part of it. So if that's the worst part of it, I don't see any gapping here. I don't see any coming apart. This doesn't bother me at all because that just looks like regular wear for any vintage piece. It's not actually broken in any portions. There's not too much of the damage anywhere else. I would just say these are very, very minor issues that come with any vintage bag. Now, $839.99 is a steal. I'm talking a real bargain here, okay? This bag would retail in the $6,500 range, and on the resale market, probably around $3,500. So what do those two numbers mean? The 6,000 number is basically if you're going to walk in and you're going to get this in a very high-end, of course, vintage store, it would be perfect, but vintage. And I would say $3,500 is what you're going to pay today in today's market based on actual sales where similar pieces have sold. So at $839, run, don't walk from this particular piece. This is a beautiful piece and a very, very good price. Now, these folks know their market, so they know, of course, who's going to come in and actually get this. If you're putting this on an online platform, you're probably going to charge a lot more than $839. But they're thinking, you know what, we have the store open, we want someone to come in, buy it, and walk out with it. So they're not dealing with shipping, insurance, and the rest of it. And people will, of course, make an issue of what I made an issue of, this particular area. But now you know the different aspects of the bag that you can look for. So I want you to be able to look for those. That's a beauty, and I would definitely say that's a real bargain. There's some other bags, right? Similar high-end, big-name designer bags that I want to look at, and some that you may not have seen before. You will probably all know I have a little bit of a Chanel fetish, a little bit. I love their makeup very much. I do like their sunglasses because they're dark, and my eyes are bad. So what we have here is we have a Karl Lagerfeld designed Chanel messenger bag. Now this thing dates, you know, 70s, 80s. It's really in very good condition. But again, it's been loved and it's old. Even if it was never, you know, it's 40, 50 years old. Even if it was never worn, this particular bag is really a beauty. Now you can see the Chanel, the double C's, Coco Chanel logo on it. You can see it right here, and then it loops again. So all the double C's, which of course is the logo for Coco Chanel or Gabrielle Chanel, who starts the company in the 1920s. In the latter part of the 20th century, in the 70s and 80s, Karl Lagerfeld, of course, is the lead designer. So this is the famous messenger bag. And messenger bags became all the rage following, of course, the 1940s and 50s. But in the 70s, smaller messenger bags, really desirable. So what are you looking for? First of all, you're looking for, on the interior, you're looking for the Chanel. Well, let's see. I'm going to take this out. But again, I like when they do this because this keeps the bag in the shape it's supposed to be in. So here's the Chanel logo on the interior, and always look at the hardware. Now, this piece of Chanel hardware right here has the Chanel name right, very clear, and all capital letters on a relatively shiny zipper here. The zipper, again, moves pretty well. Moves pretty well here. Little bit of a flaw here. That's probably makeup. That's probably makeup up against it. Difficult to get out, but this works nicely, and this should be all lined inside, which it is. And then see here, you see that number? That's another number that you have to look for inside of this Chanel purse, because this number actually gives you a serial number, and it also gives you 2 more logos indicating its authenticity. So these are easier to authenticate, again, but much, much earlier. You know, they're not doing all the things they're doing today with technology, and they're putting chips into these bags and all that kind of stuff. In the 70s and 80s, they weren't doing that. So really nice. And then one more point right here, you can see the Chanel logo here on the metallic magnet. And I want you to listen to this magnet. See this? You hear that? That's a strong magnet. They don't make strong magnets like that anymore. They don't make them so they do that. So there is, again, I'm biased. We all know this. I love vintage. So they make it better. The whole thing is better. It's relatively lightweight. And of course, the idea is that it goes crossbody, right, for the messenger bag. You can fit a ton in it, and it is the characteristic Chanel black. It's a bag that's going to be timeless. And that's really what you're looking for. Because, of course, Lagerfeld, one of the great designers of the 20th century, is no longer designing these pieces, and you can't really find these pieces. I really like the snap. I like the snap magnet. And I have to tell you, a lot of my purses are not snap magnets because I like to make sure it's closed. I don't think I would worry at all with this one because that magnet snaps so nice and strong, it's hard to open it up. Now, let's talk about price. $819.99. So for a bag like this, first of all, and here's the first thing about anything vintage from of this particular designer level, you're not going to be able to walk into any store or look really online unless you really look hard to find one like this in this condition. Okay? Then it's access. If you live near this particular store, it's easy for you. Come in, pay the bill, go. You know, not easy to find these pieces. So you really are searching for these pieces. This piece is worth about $1,250. In this condition, in this particular market. More to come from Urban Renewal Consignment.